Generally, there's a principle in Gemara that kivon shehigid shuv eine chayzer umagid, which in our context we will translate as, once you bring a magid once to speak, you heard what he had to say, is shuv eine chayzer umagid. We already heard him, we've been there, done it, and we don't repeat the monotonous process. So I am very honored and privileged to have been re-invited back to this stupendous evening for Legadel together with you, even though I told them that I think they should take a break for a year and find somebody else. But as you know, the leaders of Legadel are very stubborn, which our children should be very grateful for. And they stubbornly insisted upon my return. So, Baruch Hashem, here we are once again this evening. They tell a story that there was a rabbi who was also some type of Makubal or Kabbalist who arrived to a Jewish community in New York, Great Neck, and a couple came to see him and they said that for many years they haven't had children. They really want him to pray that they should have a child. So he said, I'm going back to Yerushalayim tomorrow. Give me a tzedakah, give me a note with your names and mother's names, and I'll put it into the Kaisel Hamaravi. Great. They give him the note. He goes back to Yerushalayim the next day. He comes back to the same community 5 years later. Who does he meet? His wife, the woman who came to see him with her husband, then comes to see him. He says, wow, it's great to see you. Tell me, how are things in the family? And she says, Baruch Hashem, we have 10 children. He says, 10 children? 5 years ago you said you have no children. How did that happen? She said, the first year we had triplets. The second year we had twins. We decided it's time for a break. So we took a break for 2 years. And we took a break for a year. And then again, we had twins and we had triplets. And here we are with 10 kids. He says, wow, that's amazing. That's awesome. That's incredible. Where's your husband? I want to wish him mazel tov. She says, my husband traveled to Eretz Yisrael. Where? To Yerushalayim. Where did he go? To the Kaisel. Why? He's looking for the note. He wants to take out the note. He wants to bring it home. There's no blessing like the blessing of children. But all great blessings come with their pair of challenges. Or we should rather define them not as challenges, but as opportunities. Is a more appropriate perspective. What are the two most important things today for a child to experience in his or her home? Well, there's probably 102 things, but I want to mention two that I think in today's world are sometimes difficult to achieve. Number one, there's a story that Rabbi Akiva Eiger once asked his grandson. Rabbi Akiva Eiger had a grandson whose name was Rabbi Legadel Eiger. He authored the Hasidic work Torah's Emes. Rabbi Legadel Eiger became a Kotzker Chassid. His father was not very happy about it. It's a story and a separate story. Rabbi Akiva Eiger was intrigued. And the story goes, Rabbi Akiva Eiger once asked his grandson, Rabbi Legadel Eiger, was hast du gefunden beim Kotzker Rebbe? Why did you go to the Kotzker? What did you find there? So he said, ich habe gefunden an Entfer auf Eier Kasche in Drush v'Chiddush Rosh Hashanah Dav Chavtes. On the spot, he says, what I found in Kotzker was an answer to a question that you, my great Zayda, not my great grandfather, but my grandfather, who's the great man Rabbi Akiva Eiger, asks in his commentary in Gemara Drush v'Chiddush on Rosh Hashanah 29. Rabbi Akiva Eiger says, what are you referring to? He says, the question you asked. Rabbi Akiva Eiger asks a question, which is a classic Rabbi Akiva Eiger question. They once asked the Sameach, the Meshech Chachmer, Simcha Kohen of Dvins, Why does Rabbi Akiva Eiger stand apart from many of the other giants? Many great achronim were extraordinary gaonim in Torah, but there's a special chiba, there's a special affection or infatuation or love to Rabbi Akiva Eiger, a special sensitivity by everybody. To Rabbi Akiva Eiger is a question, to a tzarachian, to a tzarachian gadol, to a maracha. Why Rabbi Akiva Eiger? So the Or Sameach answered, and you probably have to be an Or Sameach to be able to give this answer. He says, everyone who's mechadish, everyone who's mechabes svarim, I'm going to say it in my own words, you could see in them a change of moods. You know, every rabbi has times that he's on and times that he misses the mark. You hear a drasha, you could say, this is Fadet Sholent and this is Nachdet Sholent. Guy is having a good day, he's having a bad day. He's exhausted, he's relaxed. You could see it. Why is it that Kriyas HaTorah Shabbos morning, if the Balkara makes a mistake, everybody attacks him? Shabbos Mincha, nobody ever fixes the Balkara. Why? The answer is, Shabbos morning is before the meal and before the nap. Shabbos Mincha, they already ate, they relaxed, so people are relaxed. They don't have to fix the Balkara. So every person, you have your on days and you have your off days. He says, Rabbi Akiva Eiger is alamo Rabbi Akiva Eiger. You never catch him. He's under the flu, with a virus, with an earache. He's in a bad mood. He's not thinking. Rabbi Akiva Eiger is alamo. He's always pristine. He's always authentic. He's always who he is. So he asks a question. It's a classic Rabbi Akiva Eiger question. I say this to put the question in context. What's his question? The women will forgive me for 2 minutes, but you'll understand. I'll explain it. And you'll know what your sons do 11 hours every day. So you'll hear 3 minutes, nishkeferlich. Rabbi Akiva Eiger asks the following question. The Gemara says in Rosh Hashanah Chavtes, you have the same Gemara in Rosh Hashanah and in Megillah. Why is it that we don't blow shofar in Rosh Hashanah when it's on Shabbos? We don't shake the lulav when Sukkot is on Shabbos. Gzeira de Rabba. What's the Gzeira de Rabba? Hakol chayavim b'tkiyah shofar, ve'ein hakol pkiyim b'tkiyah shofar. Gzeira shema yelech etzel abaki, ve'yavirenu arba ames b'rshus harabba. Not everybody knows how to shake lulav. Not everybody knows how to blow shofar. People want to do the mitzvah. They may walk on Shabbos 4 ames, 4 cubits in Rishus Harabim, violate Shabbos, and therefore the Chachamim decided to tell all of the Jewish people not to do the mitzvah on Rosh Hashanah or on Sukkot, even though it's a biblical mitzvah, Sheva al Tasa, don't do it. Gzeira de Rabba. Great. Shema yavirenu, you may walk 4 amas in Rosh Hashanah. Asks Rabbi Akiva Eiger, the Gemara says in Shabbos, Tzadik Zayin, Havoris Arba Ames B'Rshus Harabim is Halacha L'Moshe Misinai. And then there's a few sources. The fact that you're not allowed to carry 4 cubits in Rishus Harabim is received from Moshe. But here's the question. There's a view in Masechta Shabbos, the view of Ben Azai, Mahalach Ka'oime Domi. Ben Azai says somebody who's walking, it's like considered as though he's standing. Why? Because every step he takes, according to Ben Azai, is like he rested. Asks Tosfos Shabbos Daf Yamid Aleph, according to Ben Azai, how could you ever be liable when you maver arba ames b'rshus harabim? There's no such a thing. I take a ball and I walk 6 or 8 feet in Rishus Harabim. Every step I take is considered like I stood. If I stood, so every step I stopped and then I started again. So I never walked 4 ames b'rshus harabim. If I take it out from Rishus Hayachid to Rishus Harabim, it works. But 4 ames b'rshus harabim, I never passed 4 ames because mahalach ka'oimedami. So you stopped every step. So every step is a separate akira, a separate anachi. You didn't go 4 ames in Rishus Harabim. So you can't be over arba ames, but you can't be over arba ames b'rshus harabim. And for Tosfos in the name of Yerushalmi, there's only one way. And that is if you jump. If you're having a good game, you're playing ball, and you jump 6 or 8 feet in Rishus Harabim, now you transgress Shabbos. Why? Because you passed 4 ames, mahalach ka'imedami, but you took 1 leap 4 Amos in Rishus HaRabim, that's the only way you could be over. Asks Rabbi Akiva Eiger, how common is it that somebody is going to jump with a shofar or a lulav 8 feet? You walk, you don't jump. You walk fast. In other words, it's a milsa de lo yishchicha klal. It's a completely uncommon thing. We have a principle, milsa de lo yishchicha, like gazru bei rabbana. The rabbis didn't forbade something that's completely uncommon, something that's unusual, something that's irregular. So they took away the mitzvah of shofar of the entire Jewish world on Rosh Hashanah. The mitzvah of lulav from the entire Jewish world, even the first day of Sukkot. Why? Because one guy, Rabbi Akiva Eiger doesn't call him a meshugana, but you may call him that. One guy is going to go jumping and flying, and it's going to be mavir. If he walks, it's not a problem according to Benazai. So why, according to Benazai, don't you blow shofar Shana v'chaliyas b'Shabbos? Rabbi Akiva Eiger's question. A good kasha? Interessante shaila, huh? Rabbi Akiva Eiger's question. You could look it up. Drush v'chiddush dav chavtas. Rabbi Akiva Eiger is listening to his grandson. He says, "Nu, where did you get an answer to this question?" He said, "In Kotz hab ich gesehen, as zu springen arba ames zu tun a mitzvah is a milse de shchicha." In Kotz I learned that to jump 6 or 8 feet for a mitzvah is common. It's not uncommon. It's a regular thing. That's why I went there. I went there to answer the question that you asked, my dear grandfather. What was he conveying? He was conveying, of course, in a very creative way, a particular idea. And that is, the most powerful way to communicate a message to your children, to your students, is if they grow up in a home where people celebrate life and therefore celebrate Judaism. Many kids who grow up Shabbos tables that are miserable. Pesach Seders that are exercises and torture. Yomim Tovim and Shabbosim that excel in boredom and monotony to the greatest point of success. If that's the situation, I want to run. People want to be happy. They want to be successful. They want to be inspired. They want to be motivated. They want to be motivated. If Tati jumps 6 and 8 feet for a mitzvah, there's a simcha that saturates the house. That becomes contagious. And by osmosis, even without messages, that energy becomes communicated. Ask yourself a question. How happy is your home? Remember, if what comes between your child and happiness is religion, or God, or Judaism, they will be seen as the enemy. If what's interrupting between a person and success and self-fulfillment and self-confidence in their eyes is their school, their rabbis, their parents, their religion, their God, this is something that people run from. And yet, sadly, in many minds, religion is associated with self-abnegation, with misery, with agony, sometimes with torture, and very often with stress and anxiety. I get an email from somebody yesterday. Listen what he writes to me. He says, "When I don't sleep, I go crazy." I said, "Okay, how can I help?" "I need 8 hours a night. If not, I lose it." "Okay." He says, "I was told about the importance of staying up the night of Shavuos. So I stay up, but I let it out on my wife and my kids the next day. I scream and I holler. In shul, I flip out. I can't deal with it. I can't be up." He wants to know, what am I supposed to do, Rabbi Jacobson? I didn't have a chance to answer him yet, so I'll answer you first. But I'll tell you what I'm going to answer. For you, my dear friend, it is forbidden to stay up on Shavuos nights. It's an Isser, and maybe an Isser min HaTorah for you to stay up on Shavuos night. But it's certainly not what God wants from you. But in his mind, it wasn't a question. Staying up Shavuos night is doicha, malbim pnei chavere berabim, making your wife, it's a mitzvah, make your wife miserable, make your children miserable. You have to stay up the night of Shavuos. Go to sleep 8 hours, wake up. Reb Chatzkel Levenstein used to tell the Bachim, he would say, you stay up a whole night, then you daven v'sikin, danach geht schlafen bis Elul. Till Elul, you wake up. By the Litvisha, Elul is very big. You know, you wake up, yeah? I was with the Mir Rosh Yeshiva a few Shabbosim ago. So I told him a joke. I don't know if he liked it, but I liked it. I said, they say it was last year, one of the Shabbosim in Elul. So there was a guy driving on Shabbos in a particular neighborhood in Geula. So there was a certain sect of Chassidim screaming, Shabbos! And then there was some Chaver, I told him from his yeshiva, who was screaming, Elul. Okay. So, you have to understand, if your Shabbos table, if the energy in my home, if the energy around Torah and mitzvahs is not one that is infused with inspiration, positive energy, with a sense of menuchas hanefesh, menuchas haguf, serenity, I am almost giving a message, and that is, you have two paths. One is a path of happiness and one is a path of misery. A woman came to me after a lecture a little while ago and she said, I have a question. I said, yeah. She said, how do I make my children happy? They're miserable. I said, I don't think you could make your children happy. The only person you could make happy, and that itself is hard, is yourself. But if a mother is really happy, the children feel that and they also become happy. So she tells me, I'm a lost case already. I will be miserable forever. I want my children to be happy. I said, interesting. I'll tell you what type of children you're going to raise. You're going to raise children who are going to tell themselves, we will be miserable, but we want our children to be happy. Now, somebody once told me, we always do things for the kinder. He's telling me, when does it stop? Everybody's doing it for the next generation. When does everybody say, the buck stops here, I do it for me, not for the next generation? But if you want to do something for your children, do for yourself. Children are sensitive to our energy, but I think there's something else in addition to that. This has to do with presence, and I think it's something with all due respect to all the men in the Ezras Anashim, that some of our men, some of fathers, husbands, struggle with the concept of presence. And I think the best way to articulate it is, in Parshas Bahar, there is the situation where a man, a Jew is poor and he sells himself as a slave, not to a Jew, to a non-Jew, to a ger toshav, to an eker mishpachas ger, to a non-Jew. He sells himself as a slave to a non-Jew living in Eretz Yisrael. What does the Torah say? It's a mitzvah on his relatives to redeem him, to give the owner money, back money, and get the slave out. Who? The first one who's listed is his brother, and then his uncle, and then his cousin, and then any relative, and then he himself. He's sigo yodei v'nigel. As the Mefarshim, why is the father not mentioned? The first one is the father. Why is Tati not mentioned? Brother, uncle, cousin, relative, himself. What about your father? Brother, yeah, father not. Uncle, yeah, father not. Your father's brother, not your father. One of the answers that's given is, the mitzvah is also a metaphor. Somebody sells himself as a slave. There is a physical slave and there's a mental slave. A mental slave is somebody who loses control over his life. We call it a life of addiction. A life in which I am a slave to other forces. I am powerless. There's a mitzvah on my friends and relatives to redeem me. Where's my father? The answer is, if I would have had a father, I probably would have not been sold as a slave. And the greatest proof is, take a look at that one boy who had every ability in the world to be sold not only physically, but emotionally, mentally, and spiritually. But he never allowed himself to be sold. And there's one reason for it. And I'm, of course, referring to that Jew who was sold as a slave. and sold as a slave by his own family. He was sold as a slave. And when he was in the abyss of Egyptian bondage, and the wife of Potiphar took a liking to him and tried to tempt him to promiscuity. He comes home one day, Zog the Gemara in Soita Lamed Vav Rav Shmuel. Chad Amar Lasois Tzrochav Nichnas. A 17-year-old boy, alone in the world, orphaned from his mother, despised by his siblings. He has nobody in the world but his master and his wife. And she will give him everything, as the Gemara says in Yuma. She promised him the world and beyond if he succumbs, if he surrenders. He was about to succumb. Remember, he's alone. It's before Matan Torah. It won't affect the family. No signs going up in Meir Sharim, Avia Vois Hatuma. No schools will not accept his sisters in seminary. No schools will reject the kid. Nobody knows. In Egypt, this is the popular thing to do. Nothing. He succumbs. What stops him? He saw a visage of Yaakov, his father, and he abstained. And I ask you a question. He didn't know what his father looked like. He was 17. He knew his father very well. He grew up with his father. He sat with him every day. What exactly did he see? An image. There was CNN and Yaakov came up on the screen. What did he see? What did he see? The image of Yaakov. He knew what Yaakov looked like before. What was it? What exactly was it? And one insight, one explanation is the word that's used for Yosef's refusal of Potiphar's wife is Vayima'in. He refused. The word Vayima'in is used once before in Bereshis, just a few verses earlier. You remember? When Yaakov is told that his son was killed, eaten by a wild animal, Vayima'in li'isnachem, he refused to be comforted. The pasuk says in Vayeshev Vayakumu Chol Banav V'Chol Bnoisav L'Nachamai. All the sons and daughters came to comfort him. He refused to be comforted. I ask you a question. We never heard that he had daughters. The first time by Nichem Avelim, where were they? In the closet? They all came out of the closet for Shiva? Where were all of his daughters? We never heard that Yaakov had daughters. We heard about one daughter. Suddenly Yosef dies and all the daughters pop out. From where? So there's a machloikas of Yehuda, Reb Nechemia, but the point is, why is it not mentioned? What does the Rachaim say and others? That was the nechama. That was the comfort. How did they comfort him? It was Friday night. Yaakov is sitting at the head table, and what does he see? Yosef is not there. But who was there? 11 boys were there. 11 boys were there. And who else? 12 girls were there. And you know who these boys were? One was a Rosh HaKoilel, one was a Rosh Yeshiva, one was the head of Atzalah, one was the head of Misaskim, Meshayrim, Mizamrim, Chevre Kadisha, hospitals, Chesed. One was Aveltz Askin, one did 9 Shiurim Daf Yomi a day. One finished this program, that program. One was Agon Ador, one was a Rabbi Shal Kol Bnei Agoyla. And the daughters, unbelievable, the seminaries they graduated. And the men they married. And the types of people they were. They looked at Yaakov, they said, Yaakov, Giba Kuk Azah Sheina Mishpacha. And you're sitting and crying about Yosef. Life has to move on. There's always one black sheep in the family. We know Yosef, we know Yosef. The Salsa Basara, he was never made for the real system. He was the outcast. He's busy dreaming that the whole world is going to bow down to him. It's not how a Ben Torah speaks. He's busy. Everyone is bowing down to him. Suns and moon. He's going to be the leader of the world. Come on. That's not Judaism. It's the closest thing to Judaism. Come on, Yaakov. How could you give up on such a beautiful family? What did Yaakov say? He refused to be comforted. Why? So the Gemara Medrash Rabbah says, Chazaka al hameis sheyishtakech min alev, not al achai. Chalila, somebody dies, people could move on. It's not easy, but they could move on. If somebody is alive, Can't move on. Yosef was alive. Yaakov couldn't find comfort. But what does it mean spiritually? Why did Yaakov refuse to be comforted for Yosef? Because everybody said he was a mace, he was dead. Yaakov said he wasn't dead. He was alive. He was chai. Yosef fell into the abyss. I'm using it as a metaphor. Yosef was sold into slavery. Yosef was with Potiphar's wife. People gave up on him, not his father. His father said, I know my son. My son is not dead. My son is alive. Don't tell me I have a nice family. I'm talking about I have a nice family. But Yosef is not a dead kid. I know my boy Yosef. You were just too narrow to appreciate his broadness, his depth, his sophistication. Vayakir Yosef es echa vehem lo hikiru. Says the Sfas Emes, says the Balatanya, says the Mezritcha Magid, that the Yosef's brothers never recognized him. Why? For them, Yiddishkeit meant to be shepherds, isolated in a cocoon, serving the Rebbeinu Shalom in isolation of spirituality. Incredible, amazing. Yosef had a different vision. Where do you see Yosef's vision? Yosef tells his brothers to give his father a message. Tell my father, Samani Elokim la'adin al kol eretz Mitzrayim. Hashem made me a master over the whole Mitzrayim. Ask the Heilige Ruzhina, Rabbi Yisrael Ruzhina. That's nachas. Go tell my father that I graduated Harvard or Oxford or Cambridge. Tell Yaakov that you didn't miss mikveh. Tell Yaakov that you put on Rabbeinu Tam's tefillin every day. Tell Yaakov that you learned Masechtas Vachim once a week. Samani Elikim la'adin al kol eretz Mitzrayim. You know your father. Says Rabbi Yisrael Ruzhina, what he was telling them is, tell my father, Samani Elikim la'adin al kol eretz Mitzrayim. Ich gemach dem Ebersten an adin av ganz eretz Mitzrayim. I turned Hashem into a master of Mitzrayim. Yosef's vision was l'sakin oilam b'malchus shin dalid yud, that the Jew ultimately ought to change the whole planet. His brothers couldn't understand. It was a different shitta. It was a different mahalach. Elu ve'elu divrei Elokim chayim. Yaakov said, I know my boy. He's not dead. You just never understood him. Ve'hem lo hikiru va'yemoyen le'isnachim. He refused to be Mekabel Tanchumin, who refused to say, that's it, he's dead, Yizgadal. He wouldn't say that. What was the result, my dear friends? Hundreds of miles away, there was a 17-year-old kid in the abyss, tempted by the allure of Egyptian moral depravity, Shichvaimi. And suddenly, Yosef was ready to surrender his soul. And then he saw an image of his father. What did he see? He saw one thing. He saw that he has a father who believes in him. He saw that he has a father who trusts him. A father who believes that he's not a loser. He's not an outcast. He's not a heretic, and he's not a black sheep. He's an ambassador of love, light, and hope. He's a chelik eloikam mimal. He's a prince of the Rebbeinu Shalom. You know why Yosef vayemoin? You know why he refused her? Because Yaakov vayemoin. It was the father's vayemoin that inspired and empowered Yosef's vayemoin. He had a father who refused to give up on his child. A father who refused to accept the black prophets who say, you have a beautiful family, but one son, one daughter, new. Percentage-wise, what do you want? It's a beautiful community, the British Jewish community. But you could expect some kids fall through the cracks. Was willst du? Yosef had a father who said, no, vayemoin. And the word vayemoin comes from the word imun, trust. From the word emunah, faith. You know why he could refuse temptation? You know why he could refuse the allure of Eishes Potiphar? Because the Muzdi Yoikne had a father who had faith in him, who had trust in him, who refused to say that he's dead, and therefore miles away, he could refuse and say, I am better than that. I am greater than my trauma. I am greater than my pain. I am greater than this temptation. He had a father. D'mus diyoiknoi shel Yaakov aviv ra b'chaloin. And his father was right. A mother recently told me her daughter has left the home and drifted away, far away, not geographically, but spiritually, morally. But she told me that every single night, 8 o'clock p.m., she called her daughter. Sometimes her daughter hung up. Sometimes she spoke to her. But she called her every single night, 8 o'clock. And if she could speak, she didn't miss one night. The mother told me. One day, she says, Hatzalah called her. She should come to the hospital. Her daughter, unfortunately, decided to take her life. And she started to take pills. But they caught it. What happened? It was the evening. And her daughter says this to her. I was so depressed. I was miserable. I decided it's over. I don't need the pain. And then you, mommy, called. Now, she had those phones where when somebody's number comes up, the picture comes up. So she says, you called. I was taking the pills and I saw your picture. And I was thinking to myself, will anybody care if I die? And I said to myself, my father, deep down, would be relieved. He would actually be happy. He wouldn't say it, but I created so many headaches for him, he'd be relieved. Some of my other siblings would be relieved. Some of the family members who are distant would say, better. And then I thought there's only one person who would actually be pained, and that was you. I saw your picture. I decided to stop. She herself called Hatzalah. They saved her life. I heard it from the mother, and then I understood what the D'mus diyoiknoi shel Yaakov aviv means. He saw the image of his father. And now I ask us fathers, do your children have such a father? To have such a father doesn't just mean I pay the bills. That's quite important. Paying the bills helps. And let's not underestimate fathers and mothers who work so hard to pay bills, to provide shelter, nurture, clothes, love, and food. But there's something equally important, and that is, am I emotionally present for my children? Do I know how to come home, take my phone, put it on off for the next 3.5, 4.5 hours, because that text that I'm hoping for is going to tell me that my personal Messiah arrived. Every Jew is waiting for that text. He's going to make 75,000 pounds off that text. That cholim shechomu acherim al acherim. The guy wants to give you 75,000 pounds. He can give it to you 11 o'clock at night. Oh, it doesn't be 7 o'clock at night. I could shut it off, sit down on the floor, and be emotionally present here for my daughters and for my sons. Just present. Fully present as a human being, as a father, as a mother, without distractions, without anxiety, without stress. Balatanya said, "Va'avadete meheira" in Krishma. What does "va'avadete meheira" mean? Medaf falirin de hergish as alt dav sein schnell, schnell, schnell. Va'avadete meheira, lose the sense of meheira, fast, fast, fast. Let's get it over with. Let's get it over with. When do you start living? Now is the moment. This is the moment. Look that child in the eyes. Look that boy, that girl in the eyes. And just celebrate life together. Be emotionally present. Not on my terms, but on his terms, on her terms. A father came to me. I was in Eretz Yisrael. He says, every day my boy comes home from yeshiva. I ask him the same question. What did you learn today? And he always says, as a good 12-year-old, nothing. Nothing. Friday night, what did you learn this week? Nothing. So why do I pay tuition? He says, I try to connect, but I always ask him what he learned. He says nothing. I say, what does he like? He tells me he loves horseback riding. I say, shine. Go horseback riding with him. Go Sunday horseback riding with him. He says, what's the source? What's the mucker? I say, what's the problem? You're not allowed to? He says, I'm going to come to heaven, and they're going to, these were his words, they're going to whip me, and they're going to send me straight to Gehenna. That I had time with my child, and I went horseback riding instead of speaking and learning. I said, listen, I have a great idea for you. You're expecting to go to paradise. I'm not. So when you come up there, you say that one sin that you want to send me to purgatory, horseback riding with my kid, that's Rabbi YY's fault. I'm anyway going there. So don't put this on the list. It won't make that big of a difference. Besides, that may be my paradise. But he couldn't understand that. He couldn't understand that. We want to connect with our kids only on our terms. That's not connection. You have to be there for your children on their terms. Presence doesn't mean presence the way I define presence. Presence means I'm present for you the way you define presence. And it's very difficult for so many of us to be present, even though that is the very stuff called life. I want to tell you a story. The story happened in a yeshiva, Yisrael, named after Rabbi Yisrael Salanta, the founder of the Muslim movement, in Petach Tikva, in the Holy Land. There was a Rosh Yeshiva there. His name was Rabbi Akiva Eiger. You know, he's always boys in a yeshiva who love getting close to the Rosh Yeshiva by telling him juicy stories about other boys. You remember those classmates? What'd you do to them? Okay. But you know that style, yeah? It's that type. Send him my regards. So they come to Rabbi Yaakov and they say, this boy, he looks like a chashav bach and everything. Mitzvah Shabbos, he goes out, he goes to the movie theaters. Rabbi Akiva Eiger says, next Mitzvah Shabbos, when he leaves, tell me. Okay, they were all too eager to rush to the Rosh Yeshiva. This boy went to the movies and they said, Rebbe, he went. It was a winter night, Mitzvah Shabbos, Tevis, Kislev in Eretz Yisrael. He takes a taxi, he goes straight to the movie theater. Kol Noah, they call it over there. Where does he go to wait for this boy? Not outside, he goes into the theater. He's standing there, and you can imagine the face of this poor kid. As he opens the two glass doors, he walks in, you know, finally he's going to have some fun, buy his popcorn and watch his movie, and who does he see right there? The Rosh Yeshiva, Rabbi Akiva Eiger, standing in a fur coat, a futemantel, standing right there. He was about to bury himself. You know, what is he going to say? He's already in the theater. What is he going to say? Why you not here? Your Elta Bubba's Levaya? You're shvigging the previous Gilgul's birthday. I mean, what are you going to answer? I mean, we know the excuses. What are you going to say? Rosh Yeshiva looks at him. The boy can't open his mouth. And he says, I don't understand you. It's a cold night. Where's your coat? Where's your coat? He says, I came without a coat. He says, I need my boys to be healthy and happy. You're going to get a cold. Why didn't you take a coat? He says, I didn't take a coat. He takes off his futemantel. It was one of those, you know those good Hasidic fur coats? One day I'm going to get one of those. You know those? They look good in the pictures. They're like Irish Olivyasan. So he had one of those. By the way, such a nice day in London. I was in London many times. I never expect. Every time it's raining here. Such a nice day in London. I don't know if it's my schus or Manchester's schus, whatever. But what a beautiful day in Britain. Kol hakavod. Somebody's doing something right. So usually always raining here. Okay, gewaldig. So he takes off his futemantel, his fur coat. He puts it on the boy, and he says, listen. You are going to have a long night, I assume. Enjoy yourself. But nimm nicht darauf den Mantel. Ich darf so sein gesund. Do what you want, but don't take off the coat. I need you to be healthy. He says, Rebbe, you need the coat. He says, nah, I'm already on the way home. I'm done. I'm taking a taxi. I'm going straight to yeshiva. Tomorrow, whenever you come back, you put the coat back in my office, and it's fine. But you don't let go of that coat. And he gives him a big hug, and he wishes him well, and off he goes back home with the taxi. The boy told a story not long ago. He said, I went into the theater. I sat down. The film began. But you know what I was thinking about for the next 2 hours? All I was thinking about was the futtermantel, the fur coat. That's what I was thinking about. This is a pedagogue, an educator, somebody who understands that people are not machines. People are souls. He understood what this boy needs more than anything else is a warm coat. The boy needs empowerment. The boy needs vayemoin. He needs imun. He needs emunah. He needs somebody to give him or her a warm coat. And that literally changed this kid's life. What did they tell you when you asked the first time, why would you have this little thing under your nose? You remember? What did they tell you? The Gemara says in Nid Lamed, in the womb of your mother, you learn the whole Torah. Right? Kol Torah Kula. 9 months, you got it done. You come out, an angel comes, Sotray Alpiv. He gives you a frask, a smack, a spanking. Umeshakcha, you forget the whole Torah. And they told us that's why we have this little thing. And when I asked the question, why do the Japanese have it? I got a smack. So I forgot the Torah a second time. I thought it was a good question, but okay. Maybe there's the Torah that the Japanese have to learn. Sheva mitzvahs b'nei noach. I don't know. Whatever. It's an interesting question. But I got a smack. So somebody once asked me, I was teaching the Gemara. Somebody says, Rabbi, I don't understand. Hashem wants you to forget the whole Torah. Why does he have to send an angel to smack you on the face? Forget the Torah. Forget the Torah. Let God press Control, Alt, Delete. Boom, geendigt. Why a smack? Can't make you forget the Torah. Take out the CD and you forgot the Torah. I said, I don't know, but I think the Gemara is trying to teach us something. You can have a child who knows the whole Torah. Every child knows the whole Torah. In the womb, they learned the whole Torah. Shma b'ni musar avicha v'yal titish Torah simecha, says the Chidushei Harim. Why by avicha it says musar? And by imecha it says al titosh, don't abandon the Torah of your mother. Shma b'ni musar avicha v'imecha. So he says, there's 2 types of musar we give our children. Tati says, musar. Mother, al titosh Torah simecha. You already know the whole Torah from the womb of your mother. Don't let go of it. Al titosh Torah simecha. That's why I always tell my students, whenever, how do you know somebody's teaching you real Yiddishkeit? There's people who teach abusive Yiddishkeit. How do you know somebody is teaching real Yiddishkeit? The answer is, if you hear it and you know that you knew it already. If you knew it already, it's Torah. You know how when you heard a song and you loved it and then you forget it and you can't remember it, but when somebody sings it, you're like, that's it. When you hear Torah, the feeling has to be, that's it. I knew this niggun. I heard it play once. This is in me. If it's not in me, if it's not resonating, it's not Torah. It's something else. It's not Torah. So you have a child who learned the whole Torah in his mother's womb. He comes out. And you know what the Gemara is trying to say? Gemara says, be careful. You know why? Ein frask. One person comes and smacks the kid, embarrasses the kid, denigrates the child, insults the boy or the girl. And you know what happens? They forget everything. And don't think that the one who smacks the child is necessarily a criminal. He could be a malach. He could be somebody who davens with kavana b'dechilu rechimu. Somebody who learns be'emu b'yira b'reses b'ziyah. A great man, a great rebbe, a great rosh yeshiva, a great mashpia, a great mechanech, a great preacher, a great man. He's a malach. But he smacked the child. He crushed that child. Maybe by mistake. Maybe inadvertently. And the boy becomes disconnected from the whole Torah. I met a Satmar Chassid not long ago. And I gave a speech in Shul, that Shabbos, about hitting children. I'm not going to tell you my whole speech now, but somebody at the end came over to me and said these words: stop spewing liberal, progressive heresy. Eloquent, no? Okay. Who was there? A Satmar Yid, an older Jew. So he gives us a Das is liberal? This is liberal? He says, the Divrei Yoel is euch gewesen liberal, progressive heresy. The Satmar Rebbe is Zichrono Levracha. The Divrei Yoel also? The man says, no. He says, I'll tell you what I heard from him. He said it was the 1950s. And I heard from the Satmar Rav Zechet Tzadik Levracha. He says this to me in Shul, Shabbos. Somebody came in and asked him if you could hit his children. And this is what the Satmar Rav told him. He said, I would be very, very careful. I said, why? We all got, who didn't get it? You remember this one? You ever got this with the stick? This was a mitzvah saseh ben HaTorah. This was the way to go. This is how you inspired kids. And the stronger you did it, the better it is. Especially if the guy had anger management. And they called it chinuch too. And they bring rayas from Rambam Hilchos Ritzayach. So he said, the Satmar Rebbe said, I would be very careful. You know why? He said, what he said, I wouldn't say it, but that's what he told me the man said. He said, a lot of these kids may be reincarnations, Gilgulim, of souls who were murdered in the Holocaust. The parents who are hitting them are the survivors. When they're hitting their children, they may be hitting their own father and their own mother. He says, be very careful. But if I could take it a step further, I would say, if this is a true observation, then it explains to me why today, when Judaism is presented in a harsh, negative way, all of our boys and girls feel alienated and they're allergic to it. Because if they are, or some of them are Gilgulim of those souls, what they know, what does it mean to be a Jew? It means to be beaten, to be crushed, to be cursed at. The calling of our generation is zu aufheben jüdische Kinder. Uplift every child. Make him or her feel that they are priceless, that their value is infinite, unwavering, absolute, that Hashem loves them unconditionally in the most powerful, infinite, intense love possible, and no mistake in the world can destroy, obliterate, alter, or even compromise that love. And for each of them to understand that they have infinite power, they're a piece of Hashem, and they're ambassadors of love, light, and hope, that they can change the world, and not to minimize them, on the contrary, to broaden them. We learned in Medrash, it says that in Zdoim, you know what they used to do in Zdoim? They were very hospitable, but they had one size bed, fits all. You remember that story? What if you were too short for the bed? You remember what they did? What if you were too short? They would stretch your feet so you match the bed. What if you were too long? What would they do? They would chop off your feet, chop off your head. Rabbi say, forgive me. It seems to me sometimes that some of us feel that Judaism has one size bed. If you're too short, we'll stretch you. If you're too long, if you're too creative, if you're too interesting, if you're too out of the box, we'll cut. We'll cut your creativity. We'll crush your personality. will destroy your ingenuity and individuality so you could fit the bed. But I ask you a question. Doesn't it say hundreds of times in Tanakh that God is not a model, nor does he have an image? So why do we insist that everyone has to look, think, and be the same? Torah is infinite. Torah is not a bed in Zdoim. Torah is a bed that is infinite. It can encompass every soul and every mind and every imagination and every heart. We don't have to limit our God and our Torah in order to satisfy our own insecurities. We ought to expand our horizons and realize the truth that every one of our children is capable of greatness because he or she is greatness. He or she is a piece of greatness. Trust it, believe it. Our job is not to create it, but to accentuate it, to make them discover it, to be able to see that they have a father, that they have a mother who truly trusts this and believes this. I want to tell you, fascinating. It says in Medrash Rabbah, in Parshas Bamidbar this week you have 2 counts. The Levium are counted and the B'chorim are counted. 2 tribal counts. All male firstborns and all Levium. And then the numbers, they exchange one another. But there's a difference. By the Levium it says, Al Pi Hashem. By the B'chorim it doesn't say Al Pi Hashem. Asks the Medrash why. This was also Al Pi Hashem. You know what he says? He says, Hashem said as follows. Why are you counting the Levium? To bring them closer to Avodas Hashem. To give them the schus, the privilege to work in the Mishkan. Here I want my name mentioned. Why are you counting the B'chorim? To distance them from avoid in the Mishkan. Don't associate my name with this. Don't put my name on this. No Al Pi Hashem, Medrash Rabbah. And then I understood the source of something. I had a relative, a famous Maggid, Rabbi Akiva Eiger. Some of you remember him. He was a relative of mine, Mishpacha. He once shared something he heard. He said he heard it himself from the Stipler Gaon. Stipler Gaon made an extraordinary observation. Some might be surprised that the Stipler said this, but that's fine. He says he heard it from his mouth. And this is what he said. Interesting. Yaakov is running away from Esav. And later he says, Ki b'makli avarti es hayarden. I crossed the Jordan with my stick. Asks Rashi, I don't understand. Yitzchak didn't give him a couple of dollars. For Yitzchak's shidduch, Avram sent 10 camels, v'kol shaloi. Yitzchak sends his son to go get a shidduch. Can't give him a little spending money. Buy a falafel on the way. Keep a makli, a stick. Zok Rashi, I had a lot of money. Eliphaz, Esav's son, comes chasing me. My father said to kill you. Because Eliphaz grew up in the bosom of Yitzchak, he abstained from murder. But for it, Afrumakind, he says, Ma esil etzivu shalaba. In Esav's family, kibud of, you got to do. Daddy said to kill, you got to kill. So Yaakov told him a whole pilpul. He learned with him a sugi and a darim. Ani choshev kameis. And that worked. Took away his money. Yaakov is poor. He's considered a dead man. Where did Eliphaz grow up? In the bosom of Yitzchak. Interesting. Who was Eliphaz? V'timna hoisa pilegesh. What type of pilegesh was she? She herself was born from a father-daughter relationship. You're dealing with the family of Esav. Rashi goes through Parshas Vayishlach. It was one znus after another after another. The absolute promiscuity. And who would be his son? Amalek. The Torah calls Yitzchak and tells us a Navi. He sees Eliphaz. What type of hope did he have from Eliphaz? Not only did he keep him in the house, he put him on his lap. In his bosom he kept him. Eliphaz in his bosom. Said the disciple, okay, Yitzchak was a nice man. He says, no. Because he kept him in his bosom, what happened? Yaakov's life was spared. We're here today. If Eliphaz would have been thrown out of the house, he would have murdered Yaakov. That would be the end of the Jewish people. Al pi teva. The reason every Jew is alive today is because Yitzchak kept Eliphaz in his bosom, extremely close to him. Some of you remember the name Zero Mostel. Zero Mostel was a famous American actor. Received lots of awards for his acting. I wondered, who gives somebody a name Zero? You ever thought of giving your child a name Zero? It's like a boy named Zlata. You remember that song? Boy named Sue. Who gives their names Zero? Zero Mostel's name wasn't Zero. You know what his name was? Shmuel Yoel. Shmuel Yoel. He grew up in the Bronx, in New York, with 8 siblings. Very, very frum family. He left. He became an actor, world-renowned, celebrity, Hollywood celebrity. He changed his name to Zero. A reporter asked him, why'd you change your name to Zero? You know what he said? When I was young, my father used to tell me, Shmuel Yoel, du bist a garnished, und du wirst bleiben a garnished. You're a nobody, and you're going to remain a nobody. He says, garnished in English is zero. I wanted to give my father nachas. I lived up to his expectations. I gave myself the name Zero. Zero Mostel, you could look it up. And then I realized, if you're not going to give your child attention, somebody else will. If you will not embrace your child, somebody else will. But they may not do it in the way that you would like them to do it. Which answers for me in a very profound question. I don't mean to be a party pooper. But Moshe Hoya Moshe was a shepherd. So the Medrash Rabbah says, that's why he was chosen. A whole story. He was shepherding the sheep, and a sheep ran away. And Moshe followed the sheep and picked up the sheep and said, you're thirsty, let me bring you to the water. Hashem said, this is how he treats sheep. He's the man. He was chosen to give the Torah, to become Moshe, celebrating Zman Matan Torah Seinu. I don't mean to be, Reb Meir Shapiro. They once asked him, what's the difference between 2 types of yeshiva bachim? He says, they both learned the Gemara in Brachas in Sukkah Daf Chav Ches. Amra lav al Yonason ben Uziel, shekol oiv shepereich alav nisraf. When Yonason learned, every bird that flew over him got burnt. Says one boy says, wow, such kedusha, such holiness. And the other boy says, is he chayiv to pay? Is he liable to pay for the bird? Dina digarmi grama. I don't want to be that type of guy. But I want to ask you a question. If I'm going to Switzerland for 2 weeks, I give you my little puppy. I give you my puppy. Shemechinam, shemesacha, whatever it is. And it runs out of the house. What do? You go chasing and you bring it back. What was the big yichus of Moshe Rabbeinu? He was a responsible custodian. This is the definition of a shomer. I give you sheep, one ran away, go get it. Why is it such an exceptional move that he went to pick up a sheep that was lost? This is what a shepherd does. This is what he gets paid for. It's nice, but that's why he deserves to get the title Moshe Rabbeinu and become the leader of the Jewish people. I'll tell you something I heard from my Rebbe. Sheep. Anybody here raised sheep? You're not farmers? You're into real estate more. Okay. But used to be Jews were farmers. Sheep are herd animals. They like being with their herd. They like being with groups. They're also docile by nature. They're submissive. In Yiddish we say, as a shefala, a shepsala. In English too, he's a sheep. A very docile, submissive, easygoing person. Not stubborn. Sheep are surrendered animals. They surrendered to the group. Kirochel lifnei goy zizeo ne'eloma, the Navi says. Like a ewe silent in the presence of her shearers. That's a Rachel, that's a sheep. Here a sheep ran away from the whole herd. It ran. What is our instinct? What is our inclination? Look at that sheep and say what? Ah, wilde chaya. Ah, shegetz. Ah, beheme gas. Ah, pera adam. Ah, garnish mit garnished. Ah, bal taiva. Ah, gas ruach. Ah, rosha merusha. Koife beiker. Nothing like Yiddish. How do I say this in English? Doesn't work. There's nothing like curse words in Yiddish. Nothing like curse. Or what that our grandmother's curses, nothing like it. Alle seine Zähne sollen herausfallen, chutz von die, was ist zwei. All his teeth should fall out besides the one that hurts. Soll sein wie a Leichter, hängen bei Tag und brennen bei Nacht. You should be like a candelabra, hang by day and burn at night, etc. I look at this sheep. What do I say? He's a rebel. He's the black sheep. Sheep like to be with the group. Why did he run away? He's a bad kid. Sick sheep. That would be my instinct. What did Moshe do? Moshe went to the sheep, lifted up the sheep, put it on his shoulder, embraced the sheep, and he said one word. He said, I'm sorry, I didn't realize you were thirsty. You were looking for water and nobody gave you the water. Let me bring you to the water. When Hashem saw this, he says, this is my leader. Because he knew that in the Jewish history, there will be many sheep who will run away from the herd. And it will be easy to point at the boy and the girl and label and say, the black sheep, the rebel, the bad kid, the troublemaker. But Moshe Rabbeinu, Hashem says, you want to be a Manig Yisrael? You want to be a father, a mother, a teacher, a rebbe, or a yeshiva? A mashgiach, a mechanech, a source of light? Go over to the sheep, lift it up, embrace it and say, you were looking for water. You couldn't find water. Let me go. Help you discover water. That made all the difference. I want to tell you something. I heard this mamish klei rishon. It happened to the person himself. He shared with me the story. And I have a brother. My older brother, Simon, gives a weekly shir in Manhattan for around 35 years, Wednesday night. Mostly secular Jews. Some years ago, a young man came into the class, sat down. My brother noticed that physically he was disabled. He came for a few weeks, and then one week he had the courage. After the class, he went over to my brother and he opened up. He was born with serious disability, with a rare neurological disease that affected many of his skills, including his motor skills, some developmental skills, and even his ability for verbal communication. Both of his parents live in Manhattan, Jewish, successful, affluent couple, extremely active in social circles. When the doctor reported to the parents about the rare disease of this boy and there is no hope that he should grow up, quote unquote, normal, the doctor said, you may want to put him in a home. And that's what they did. They never took the boy home. He tells my brother, he's 29, 30 years old. He never met his parents. Every month they send a nice check to be able to help him support himself. But they never met him. He never met them. He was in a home from the day he was born, the day he left the hospital. My brother told this to me. He says, this kid had a speech impediment and some other difficulties, but he was a lichtik neshama, fine, edel, spiritual, luminescent, bright, so deep, emotionally sensitive. You meet people who are just extraordinary souls, great neshamas. And his heart went out for me. He said, would you like to meet your father and mother? He says, sure, who doesn't want to meet their father and mother? He looked up the father. He told me it wasn't easy. He called up the father. He said, yes. He introduced himself. And he said, I'm sorry for this uncomfortable telephone call that I'm making. But I've got to know your boy. I think it would be wonderful for you and for him and your wife to meet each other. As he's talking, boom, phone hangs up. My brother says, oh, we got interrupted. He calls back. The man picks up and says, yes. He continues. He says, haven't you heard that I hung up the phone on you? Don't mix into my life. Boom. You know, that's not a telephone type of rejection that we appreciate getting. He waited a week, called back again, and the man said, don't mix into my life. He waited a few months. I give him credit, and he called the mother. And he tells the mother the same thing. The mother starts crying, and the mother says, we made a decision 30 years ago. We're not about to recalculate our whole life. Please stop it. Thank you. He calls her back a few days later, and he says, hear me out for a minute. There are children who are orphans. Their whole life, they walk around wondering who their father or mother was. Somebody who tells them a story, their eyes light up. Somebody who gives them a picture, they cherish. There are kids who are adopted. Their whole life, they're searching for their real parents. Here you have a boy living in the same borough, in the same city like his parents. It's not fair. He's not even asking to move into your house. He's asking to see you. Why don't you give him the dignity of knowing who his father and mother are? It just does not make sense to me. It's a cruel thing. Let him know where he comes from. She says, you have to talk to my husband. He calls the husband. He makes a case. And the husband says, I have to think about it. Calls back. The husband says, okay, he could come for a visit, but you have to be there. I guess he wanted him as a buffer, emotional buffer zone. They scheduled a Sunday afternoon. My brother picked up the boy, went to the apartment, a penthouse overlooking Central Park in Manhattan. He told me you walked in. It was one of the most beautiful views in Manhattan. Obviously, they were extremely wealthy and well-to-do, thank you. He walks in with their boy, who's by now around 31 years old. There's nuts on the table. There's chocolate on the table. They sit down. Nobody makes eye contact. Nobody. What do you talk about Sunday afternoon? By us, they talk about football. They talk about the weather. You talk a little bit about Trump. Whatever you talk about. 10 minutes, and they're talking about the weather. Not going anywhere. My brother interrupts, and he says, listen, we're not here to discuss Sunday football. We're just not here for that reason. I'll tell you why we're here. I met your son a year ago, a year and a half ago. I was blown away by his character, depth, and spiritual refinement. I thought it would be a privilege for him to meet his parents and for his parents to meet him, to meet each other. I think you owe it to each other. That's why we're here. So why don't you introduce yourselves? The boy opened his mouth first. And my brother told me it was obvious that he had to rehearse this because the words did not come easy. Now, he could not say papa or mama. He had to say papa, mama. He couldn't say pop, mom. These were his words, verbatim. The boy says, papa, mama, I was not born perfect. But so were you. You also were not born perfect, Papa and Mama. I have forgiven you for being imperfect. I hope one day you will be able to forgive me for being imperfect. The mother burst out crying. She ran over to her son and she embraced him. And the father followed. My brother told me at that point he felt like a shadchan after the chuppah. It was time to leave. He excused himself. He said goodbye, but the family was reunited. I ask us, have you forgiven your children for being imperfect? Have you forgiven yourself for being imperfect? We all say yes. Did you really? Is it not true that sometimes we have a certain model for our children and they don't fit that model and it's hard for us to forgive? Can you forgive your children for being imperfect? If you could forgive yourself for being imperfect, you forgive your children for being imperfect. And you can embrace them for who they are. At last, somebody once asked me in a community, I visited a community with 2 rabbis. It's a smaller Jewish community in the States. One rabbi was groomed. He looked perfect. He was eloquent. He had 2 PhDs, but he didn't do well in the community. The other one, I don't know how to say it nicely, was completely not as skilled, but everybody loved him. And they asked me, Ma bein bni lebein chami, maishna, what's the difference? So I'll tell you the difference. The way I understand it, not just general difference. I fly a lot. Unfortunately, I fly a lot. And I always had a question. I took last night actually, a Delta flight from JFK to London. If your relative would need, Khalila, a heart surgery, you don't open the telephone book and look for cardiologist. You see a name, Goldberg or Finkelstein, you call them up, you make an appointment. That's not how Jews do it. You call up the Rosh Hashanah, you want to have the best cardiologist, not in the United Kingdom, but in the world. And then you call up another 10 people who know this person. And you find out who he treated and what happened. And then you subject your loved one to treatment under his knife. For good reason. You don't just choose a doctor. You have to know who. So I wondered on myself. I said, last night I went on an airplane, a Delta airplane. Before, I should have called Delta. Give me the name of your pilot. I want to know where he went for high school, where he graduated, who gave him smicha, how many times he has flown, what he eats for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Is it on a mala, who he is, where he flew, how many times, and call 20 people who flew with him. And find out, I never saw any Jew, even the paranoid hypochondriacs. Or like the guy who once told me, just because I'm paranoid, it doesn't mean the whole world is not out to get me. Even those types of people, I never saw that before they board a plane, they investigate the name, the status, the reputation, the resume, the history of the pilot. Why not? It's a good question, no? It's not as good as Rabbi Akiva Eiger's question, but it's a good question. Rabbis say the answer is not so complicated. When I'm going for surgery under the knife of a surgeon, if he knows what he's doing, great. And if he doesn't know what he's doing, he's not affected. I'm affected. He finishes the surgery, he goes home to drink his iced coffee or latte, lay on his hammock with his pina colada, and life moves on. The patient under his care dies, doesn't die, but he goes to sleep. The pilot, if he doesn't know what he's doing, it's not only I'm going down. If I'm going down, he's coming down with me. You know what? Such people I don't have to investigate. Such people I trust. Nobody asks who the pilot is. There are 2 types of educators. There are 2 types of parents. There are 2 types of vision for Yiddishkeit today. Are we doctors or are we pilots? A doctor is a skilled surgeon, perhaps, but he does not experience the patient. A pilot lives with the patient. And this is how 2 people, not seeing each other, said the same thing. Comes Matan Torah, the hero of Matan Torah, the man who does it is Moshe. Zichru Torahs Moshe Avdi Mosa Nafshe ala Torah. And yet 40 days later he comes down, he sees a golden calf, and what does he do? He smashes the luchas, breaks them. Ask everybody, why break them? Why break them? Some of you might have sold them on eBay. But that I'm not suspecting Moshe Rabbeinu. Give them back to the Rebbeinu Shalom. Keep them in your tent. Put them on a mountain. You take the luchas, maisa, lekim, ema, michtav. They don't deserve it. They don't deserve it. Why smash such sacred material? Why destroy them? Reb Tzadok HaKohen of Lublin, Tzidkas HaTzadik, Ois Kuf Nun Daled, or Kuf Nun Vav, one of the two. And the same exact statement, almost verbatim. The Holy Kamarner Rebbe in his commentary, Kesem Oifir on Megillas Esther, on the Pasuk Vayave Mordechai, both say the same thing. I wouldn't say it, it's quite daring, but you could look it up. Why did he break it? You know why he broke it? They say as follows. In order to help somebody, you have to go down to their state. Baal Shem Tov says, Kol shliach tzibur she'eino mechuyev b'davar, eino moitzi asarab m'yedei chevasa. Mechuyev doesn't mean obligated. Mechuyev also means guilty. If you're not guilty with what the other person is experiencing, you can't take him out from his guilt. If I'm a lifeguard, I can't sit on the throne and save somebody. I have to jump into the water to schlep them out of the water. If they're in a pit, I have to go down and get dirty to schlep them out of the pit. Moshe Rabbeinu was on top of a mountain. He wasn't even there when they did it. And he asked himself one question. How can I lift up the Jewish people when I cannot identify with them, empathize with them? I don't even understand them. I'm in heaven, and they're worshiping idolatry, avodah zarah, with a golden calf. What did Hashem tell him? 2 words. Lech, raid. Not geographically. Spiritually, emotionally. How? How do I go down? Dr. Tzadok and the Kamarner, Moshe took the luchas. You know what he did? He broke them. Why? He was angry. The Gemara says in Masechta Shabbos, Daf Kuf Dalet. You remember? I quote Reb Tzadok. HaMeshaber kelim b'chamosoi. If somebody breaks vessels in his anger, in his ire, in his wrath, harezeh ko'ived avodah zarah. Kevayachal, it's like idolatry. Moshe broke the tablets in order to go into the space of the Jewish people and from there to lift them up. Moshe says, I'm coming up and they're coming up with me. He understood if you want to help a generation, you can't be a doctor. You need to be a pilot. When it comes to children, when it comes to students, I can't only be a doctor. I must become a pilot. And sometimes I have to be ready to break that which seems holiest to me in order to go into the world of the child and show him that God exists even in broken places. And God exists even in broken shards and in fragments. Because I will not be able to lift him or her up if I wait until he or she climbs the plateau of perfection. This is what Moshe understood with the sheep. This is what Moshe understood with the luchas. Which is why it's moving to be part of the incredible work of Legadel. What is the mission statement and the theme of Legadel? If I'm not mistaken, I think it can be articulated very clearly in these words. Never ever allow any child to fall through the cracks and give up on him or her by saying, there's always the black, challenging sheep in the family who leaves the herd. To always allow that child, that boy and girl, to know that he or she has a father and mother who will forever stand behind them, who believe in them, trust them, and will do everything to polish the diamond, to help them actualize their true infinite potential and help them see the truth about themselves, that they are pieces and fragments, literally, of Hashem, of divinity, to be able to look at every single child and say, never will we allow a certain section, percentage, even fraction of our community and of our people and of our nation to be lost due to the fact that we may be uncomfortable or insecure to expand our horizon and realize that every single one of these young men and women are loved unconditionally by Hashem and must be loved unconditionally by us, allowing ourselves sometimes to break all of our conceptions, to shatter our stereotypes, to leave our comfort zones, to be able to stare them in the eyes and make them feel that they have a dmuzdi oiknoi. There are people who not only believe in them, but who trust them with every fiber of their being, because they know that the goodness, the holiness, the wholesomeness, and the sacredness in them is absolute, unwavering, and eternal. And for this work that you're involved in, we all say tonight to you, Chazak, Chazak, V'nis Chazek. Thank you very much.